As we mentioned at the top of the show, it's now been 100 days since insurrectionists stormed the seat of our government in an attempt to overthrow an election. Now, one of the things that shocked people watching the scene that day was how the vast majority of those insurrectionists, many of them violent, were allowed to essentially just walk away from the scene of the crime. No attempt at making mass arrests at the Capitol. In fact, many of the insurrectionists were allowed by law enforcement to get into a car or on a plane and go home. They were allowed to flee the scene. Now, some were arrested days later, some months later, and many of them are still at large and wanted by the FBI. Contrast that event 100 days ago with the week that we just experienced as a nation. In the past week, we watched as 20-year-old father Daunte Wright was shot to death during a traffic stop, initially over expired registration tags that escalated into an arrest for an outstanding misdemeanor warrant. He was unarmed. The officer who shot Daunte Wright said she thought she had reached for her taser and was attempting to stop him from fleeing the scene. Instead, she shot Daunte Wright in the chest, ending his life. In Chicago, we watched the footage of 13-year-old Adam Toledo, who was shot by a Chicago police officer. The officer was responding to a call about gunshots in the area. Now, according to a statement from that officer's lawyer, the 13-year-old, quote, began to flee, end quote, when the officer took after him. Police say that a 9mm pistol was found at the scene that day, but video appears to show Adam Toledo complying with the officer's requests and putting his hands in the air just before he was killed. All that happening against the backdrop of the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who stands accused of murdering George Floyd while trying to arrest him for allegedly using a counterfeit $20 bill. Prosecutors and the defense in that case called expert witness after expert witness to debate whether Derek Chauvin's decision to put his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes might have been an appropriate response for a police officer in that situation. George Floyd and Daunte Wright and Adam Toledo did not get to just go home and wait the way so many Capitol insurrectionists did. They did not get to walk away from the scenes of their alleged crimes carrying stolen laptops and other souvenirs. They didn't get to stop for a selfie with the police on their way home. Now, of course, not everyone who stormed the Capitol on January 6th received that kind of treatment. Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed by police when she and a mob of other protesters attempted to breach a barricaded door inside the Capitol. And there were many Capitol police officers who worked hard to protect the Capitol that day, including one who lost his life in the process. But when we reflect on the history-making attack on our democracy that took place just 100 days ago, it's hard to watch the footage from that day, alongside the continuous stream of footage of men and women and children dying during everyday interactions with police. It's hard to look at those incidents together and not conclude that there are, in fact, two systems of justice in this country. Can that be fixed? And if so, how? Joining us now, Philip Atiba Goff. He's a professor of African American Studies and Psychology at Yale University and a co-founder of the Center for Policing Equity. Philip, it's good to talk to you again. Thank you for being with us. You and I have spent some good time over the last year having this discussion about policing and about different justice systems in this country. We're now we're now almost a year out from when George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. What's your sense of what things look like now when you take a look at that comparison to how people were treated on January 6th?
Yeah, I mean, it's an apt comparison. We've been seeing on social media for the last several days, Kyle Rittenhouse is out drinking underage, Dylan Roof got Burger King, and then Adam Toledo is shot with his hands up, literally complying with an officer's orders. It churns your stomach. It makes you wonder how anybody who is living in these neighborhoods that are constantly surveilled by law enforcement could possibly trust that when they call out for help, that what's going to show up is safer than what they're calling out for help from. But I do think that once we're past this trial, there's reason for optimism in the country. There are thousands of little experiments across the country. Project NIA out of Chicago has this wonderful thousands of experiments website, because there are local organizers that are saying, we're done with doing things the way that we have done them. So in city after city, they're taking law enforcement out of mental health checks. They're taking law enforcement out of low-level traffic enforcement, which would have saved Dante Wright's life. They're taking law enforcement out of the places where there's a danger that they could hurt somebody, and there's not a lot of utility of introducing a badge and a gun. And so I don't know what's going to happen on the other side of all those experiments, but I do know that there are enough folks in this country who are saying, enough, we have to change the way that we allow communities to keep themselves safe.
And I don't want to paper over what some people mean, because some people, when they say defund the police, mean they don't want police around. But what a number of people mean is reallocate resources to things that can be more effective. And so many police calls that go wrong are traffic stops, petty crimes, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, things that there are other ways to deal with. Is the reception for some of these ideas, like this Project Nia that you're talking about, is it growing with people who understand that these things don't have to end up in death, and they don't have to end up with entire communities distrusting the police or fearing for their lives every time they interact with police?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at least in my experience talking to communities all over the country, and frankly talking with law enforcement, there's one place where I think we're not going to go back. I think we're not going to go back to thinking that we're going to solve these problems by making policing bigger. And you're quite right. People mean different things by defund, but at the root of the defund movement, such as it is a word that is scary in these places for lots of folks, the word abolition. Okay. And I got to say out loud, abolition in these contexts often comes from a guy named W.B. Du Bois, writing in 1935 when he coins the phrase abolition democracy. And I want to be clear, he's not just talking about the United States and having abolished slavery. He's talking about abolition democracy as a language for what we've got to stand up affirmatively to get rid of the toxins that slavery left us in the body politic. It's not just about getting rid of something. It's about the things that we need to put in place so we can actually look like our ideals. In the context of policing, what that means is, isn't everybody safer when they don't have to call out for help in an emergency, when they have the resources so they don't need to call 911 in the first place? So yeah, people mean lots of different things when they say defund, but everybody can agree that no real estate agent has ever made a sale when they say, and in the end, you get to call 911 more often. That's ridiculous. And so the logic that we need more law enforcement to keep us safe rather than more resources so we don't need law enforcement, I'm hoping that that's run its course, because I know that the communities that are most affected, they're never going back to that.
We're looking at a protest in Chicago on the left side of the screen, by the way, and people are dancing. It's a performance of sorts, actually. Philip, thanks. This is an evolving conversation, and I appreciate how much time you spent with us in the last week helping us all sort this through. Philip Atiba Goff is a professor at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice and a co-founder of the Center for Policing Equity.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.